Imagine planning the perfect surprise for the love of your life, only to arrive and find them missing, their phone off, and a cryptic note that says, "I had no choice." What would you do? Before we dive into this thrilling conclusion, let me know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. Now, let's uncover the truth. Sophie Carter's heart raced as she stepped off the plane at JFK, a nervous thrill surging through her. She clutched her phone, rereading the last text from Daniel. "Talk soon, love you." Something about it felt off. Too short, too distant. But she shook the thought away. This trip was supposed to be a surprise, a grand, romantic gesture. She hadn't seen him in weeks, and lately, their phone calls felt strained. She needed to remind them why they had fallen in love in the first place. The cab ride to their Brooklyn apartment was agonizingly slow, the city's neon glow flashing past in streaks of red and gold. Sophie tapped her fingers against her suitcase, excitement buzzing in her veins. She imagined his reaction when he opened the door. Shock, followed by that warm, dimpled smile she adored. Maybe he'd scoop her up in his arms, laughing at how crazy she was for flying in unannounced. But as she reached the apartment and turned the key in the lock, that warm fantasy shattered. The air inside was cold, stale. The apartment was dark, too dark. Her stomach twisted as she stepped inside. Something felt wrong. "Daniel?" she called, her voice uncertain. Silence. Her pulse quickened. She flicked on the lights, scanning the room. Nothing looked out of place, except for the unsettling stillness. She moved toward the bedroom, and that's when she noticed it. The closet door. It was slightly open. Sophie hesitated before pulling it wider. Half of his clothes were missing. A chill crawled down her spine. She grabbed her phone and dialed his number, her fingers trembling. Straight to voicemail. "Hey, babe, it's me. I just got in. Where are you?" Her voice wavered. "Call me back, okay?" She hung up and called again. And again. Same result. Her breath hitched. Something wasn't right. Frantically, she called his best friend, Mark. "Mark, have you seen Daniel?" A pause. Too long. Not for a few days." "Why?" Sophie swallowed hard. "I just got to the apartment. He's not here. His phone's off." "That's weird," Mark muttered. "He didn't mention any trip or anything." Her hands tightened into fists. "You're sure?" "Yeah. Last time we talked, he just seemed stressed about work. But that's normal." Normal. But this wasn't normal. Sophie's eyes darted around the room, desperate for some kind of explanation. That's when she saw it. An envelope. Sitting alone on the kitchen counter, with her name scrawled across it in Daniel's handwriting. Her breath caught in her throat as she tore it open. A single sentence stared back at her. "I'm sorry, Sophie. I had no choice." Her world tilted, her chest tightened. No choice? No choice about what? Tears burned her eyes as she reread the words, her hands shaking. Daniel was gone, and Sophie had no idea why. Sophie's hands trembled as she clutched the letter, her breath coming in short, uneven gasps. "I'm sorry, Sophie. I had no choice." The words blurred as tears welled in her eyes. This wasn't just an absence, it was an abandonment, an erasure of everything they had built together. Her mind spiraled through a storm of questions. Had he left her? Had something happened to him? Was he in danger? The silence of the apartment was deafening, wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. She forced herself to take deep breaths. Think, Sophie. Think. She needed answers, and she needed them now. Clutching her phone, she called Daniel's number again, straight to voicemail. She tried texting, her fingers shaking as she typed, "Sophie. Daniel, please. What's going on? Where are you?" No response. A cold sweat broke out on her skin. He had to be somewhere. Someone had to know something. She scrolled through her contacts and dialed Mark again, pacing the room as the phone rang. "Hey, Soph," Mark answered, his voice laced with concern. "He left me a note, Mark." Her voice was strained, barely holding back the rising panic. "It just says, 'I'm sorry. I had no choice.'" "What the hell does that even mean?" Mark exhaled sharply. "That doesn't make sense. He never said anything about leaving. He was stressed, sure, but he wouldn't just vanish like this. Not without telling me. Not without telling you." Sophie ran a hand through her hair, gripping the roots as frustration boiled inside her. "His clothes are gone. His laptop. It's like he packed up and disappeared overnight. And his phone. It's off." Mark hesitated. "Look, I don't want to freak you out, but what if something serious happened? Like, really serious? What if—" A knock at the door made Sophie jump. Her heart pounded in her chest. Slowly she approached, her breath shallow. She wasn't expecting anyone. Was it Daniel? She yanked open the door. A man stood there, a stranger, dressed in a black suit, his expression unreadable. He held up a badge. "Miss Carter?" Her throat tightened. "Yes?" "I'm Agent Harris, FBI." Sophie's pulse skyrocketed. "FBI? Can I come in?" His voice was calm but firm, an air of authority in every syllable. She hesitated but stepped aside, allowing him in. The door clicked shut behind him, and he wasted no time. "I'm here about Daniel Moore." Sophie's stomach twisted into knots. "Do you know where he is?" Agent Harris studied her carefully, as if assessing whether he could trust her. Then he spoke, each word measured. "Miss Carter, I need you to be honest with me. How much do you know about Daniel's work?" She blinked. He works in finance, investments." The agent's jaw tensed. "Is that what he told you?" Sophie felt her blood turn to ice. "What do you mean?" Harris sighed, pulling a small notepad from his pocket. "Daniel Moore has been involved in an ongoing federal investigation. We believe he's been working as a confidential informant." Her ears rang. "An informant? For what?" The agent's gaze didn't waver. "For the last 2 years, Daniel has been helping us build a case against a powerful criminal organization. His role was critical. And now," he exhaled, "now he's missing." Sophie's legs felt weak, as if the ground had been ripped out from under her. No, that's not possible. I know him. He would have told me." "Not necessarily," Harris said gently. "He kept this from you for a reason. Most likely, to protect you." Sophie shook her head, unable to process the words. Daniel? A criminal informant. The man she loved. The man she was supposed to marry. He'd been lying to her. Their life together had been built on a foundation of secrets. She suddenly felt sick. Harris leaned forward. "Miss Carter, I need you to think. Has Daniel seemed paranoid? Did he mention anyone following him? Any threats?" Her mind reeled back to the last few months. The way he would glance over his shoulder. The nights he came home late, exhausted, saying he had meetings. The way his texts had grown shorter, more distant. And then, the last time they spoke. She had called him 2 nights ago, just before she boarded her flight. His voice had been strained, his words clipped. "I love you, Sophie. No matter what happens, remember that." She had laughed it off at the time, thinking he was just tired. But now, she realized, he was saying goodbye A sharp, cold fear crawled up her spine. What if he didn't run? She whispered. What if something happened to him? Harris's expression darkened. That's what we're trying to find out. Sophie felt her hands go numb. The letter in her grasp was crumpled now, her grip tightening around it as realization sank in. Daniel was gone. Not because he wanted to be, because he had to be. And if the FBI was involved, it meant he might never come back. Sophie sat frozen, her heart pounding like a war drum. The air in the apartment felt suffocating, thick with the weight of Agent Harris's words. Daniel was an informant. Daniel was missing. And now, she was in the middle of something far bigger, something dangerous. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to focus. What happens now? Harris studied her carefully. That depends. If Daniel planned this disappearance himself, he may have gone into witness protection. If that's the case, he's alive but unreachable. But if someone else made him disappear? His voice trailed off, the implication clear. Sophie clenched her fists. Number. She refused to believe that. Daniel wasn't dead. He wouldn't have left that note if he wasn't alive somewhere. She took a shaky breath. You said he was working with you, so why didn't you protect him? Harris sighed. He was close to something big, bigger than we anticipated. A few weeks ago, we lost contact with him. We assumed he was playing it safe, staying under the radar. He paused. But if he left you that note, it means he knew something was coming, and he didn't trust us to stop it. Sophie's mind raced. If Daniel had uncovered something huge, something life-threatening, then there had to be a clue. Somewhere. She glanced around the apartment, eyes scanning every familiar surface. Then she remembered. Daniel was meticulous about his records. He always said, if something's important, keep a backup. A jolt of realization shot through her. His safe. Without a word, she sprang to her feet and rushed to the bedroom. Harris followed, his eyes narrowing as she dropped to her knees and pushed aside the rug. There it was, a small black safe, hidden beneath the floorboards. Her hands trembled as she entered the combination. Click. The lock disengaged. Inside, there were stacks of papers, a flash drive, and a burner phone. She grabbed the phone first, turning it on. One unread message popped up. Daniel, if you're reading this, it means I had no choice but to disappear. I'm sorry, Sophie. I did this to keep you safe. They're watching you now. Trust no one. The breath left her lungs. She looked up at Harris, suspicion creeping into her veins. Who exactly are you investigating? His jaw tightened. An organization known as the Black Veil. Money laundering, human trafficking, arms dealing. Daniel got too close to exposing them. Sophie's blood ran cold. They're watching you now. Suddenly, the weight of Daniel's words hit her full force. She wasn't just a grieving fiancé. She was a target. The walls of the apartment felt thinner, like eyes were peering through them. Her skin prickled. We have to go, Harris said urgently, as if he could sense it too. You're not safe here. Before Sophie could respond, the sound of tires screeching outside made her heart stop. Shadows moved past the window. Harris reached for his gun. Move! Now! He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the back exit, just as the front door burst open. Men in black flooded in, armed, faces cold. Sophie barely had time to breathe before gunfire exploded around them. Harris shoved her through the back door, his own weapon firing as they ran into the night. Adrenaline surged through her veins. Her life, her normal life, was gone. In its place was something she didn't understand, a world of shadows and secrets. But she wasn't broken. Daniel had left her a message, a warning, and more than that, a clue. She would find him, no matter what it took, no matter how deep she had to go. Because love wasn't just about happy endings. Sometimes love was a war, and she was ready to fight. If you love this story and want more thrilling mysteries, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Stories of Brilliance. Stay tuned for more twists, more suspense, and more unforgettable tales.